What's going on, Kyle? You rocking out?
Yeah, I love this music. It's great. It's
That is a
fantastic.
good song. And this is the first time we've heard this in 2024, the first MSP Community Live episode. So thanks for coming, everyone.
How do they know this
Um,
isn't recorded in 2023?
hmm, good question.
Hmm.
Wonder if any of our threads are from today. That's the way to tell, like the way you hold up a newspaper with the date
Yeah,
on it.
yeah. There you go. You have you have to write your name and the date and an event or something.
I like it. Um, so Ray's not here. Kyle and I are filling in. I don't actually know where Ray is, but we will manage without him.
I don't know where Ray is.
Not here. That's all that matters.
So, how
We're out
was
of
your New Year?
practice.
How was your New Year?
So mine was good. I didn't do anything. I think it's a sign I'm getting older in that I stayed up
Yeah,
until 10 o'clock. That was late enough for me. Went to bed. Didn't really do, didn't party because I didn't want to deal with like driving drunk drivers or any of that stuff. Just kind of stayed home, stayed in, ordered in takeout, and that was it. So a very different kind of New Year's than ones I had, not that long ago. How about you?
the same. I mean, at some point, it's just like, I mean, it's nothing is different. There was zero change except I forget the right date for like a month. That is it.
All right, you're thinking about staying up, and then you say
But why?
it's not worth blowing my sleep schedule up for the rest of the year,
Yeah, but why? What?
right?
Oh, okay, I watch a circle slowly lower down.
So the people who have it good, or if you live like in Denver or in California, like Mountain or Pacific time, you stay up, you watch the
It's 8
East
o'clock.
Coast New Year's Times Square, and go to bed.
Yeah,
That's the way to do it.
should move. It's East Coast time zone stuff. Although we are the best time zone, let's be honest. That's why we do everything first.
It depends. Like so Mountain time seems awesome if you're a sports fan. I always thought that would be nice to have like the Monday night or Sunday night football game start at 6 o'clock, and you don't have to like stay up all night just to watch your team lose. In my case,
Who's your team?
oof, Jets fan. It's been a
Yeah,
rough year.
it has been a rough year. Although there were some sparks here and there. That's always nice to hear. As a Packer fan, who was barely looking to make 3 games, and all 3 of those wins were in the NFC North. Just because rival games, right? We made the playoffs, and I'm super excited about that.
You guys seem to have done it a third time in a row. Jordan Love, another quarterback.
Maybe. I mean, all these people are going like, he's it, he's not it, he's it, he's not it, and it's just kind of like, it's his first year. Why don't we give it a few years and let's see if how that plays out? All right. Let's not give him a $150 million contract out the gate because someone said he might be a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Uh,
Although it would be
you
really
might have the answer
hilarious.
again.
It would be. I would thoroughly enjoy it. What if football?
Five
Let's
for
talk
one
about
now.
Reddit.
Oh, okay. Yes. Let's talk about Reddit. So we have these have to be good threads because we have what about a month worth of content
Roughly,
to pick from.
roughly, yeah, something like that.
All right. Dress code advice. So we were talking before the show that I found it interesting that this was downvoted to 0, and you started giving your thoughts on it.
I
So
did.
let's just go through the
Uh,
background on this first. Uh, so this is a service manager or owner or exec or someone who introduced a dress code policy for all our techs. Just to wear a company branded T-shirt, not even like a polo. They don't have
that was the
polos at this
first like.
company.
That was like that triggered me instantly. Was like reading T-shirt.
Interesting.
Yeah.
One of our techs, let's go.
Continue.
So whenever I see one of our techs, let's call him Stan. I think, okay, this is the guy who like posted, right?
Yeah.
Um, quite against the idea from the get go. Made the point of he doesn't drive, barely leaves the office. Okay, so he's like a remote tech or just someone who's not
Yeah.
necessarily client facing. Rarely have people in the office. Wouldn't be a point to him being branded all the time. Mentioned to Stan that it was to keep consistency, all text. So it sounds like he's having everyone wear company logo like on Zoom meetings and team meetings, I guess.
So he wants, because I scrolled, this was a little older and I happened upon it initially. It was, so I
All right.
read
What
it.
are your thoughts?
Well, to give a little bit more information, because it helps be as negative about this type of situation. It helps validate your feelings about being negative about it. So first off, the fact that he is giving t-shirts and not polos in my mind is like, why t-shirts? Like, is it a money issue? Because t-shirts are cheaper generally than polos. Like, unless you get a screen printed polos, and it kind of doesn't really matter. But embroidered
Are they
polos
trying to be
can
like
be.
a Silicon Valley startup kind of company that wears t-shirts to the office?
But so from what I understand, they already have branded jackets. That's in the initial post.
Okay.
Immediately, why are you making them also wear t-shirts? The initial, a lot of this individual in his company has decided to make the technicians only wear branded t-shirts. And Stan is one who doesn't want to. And I don't blame Stan. I think Stan is morally right's the wrong way to say this. Right in the like if, in a debate, I would pick Stan as the correct choice of action. However, he does work for a company, and it is that company's decision to make this happen, and that is their
It's their prerogative.
it's
Yeah.
their prerogative. Yeah, so you kind of have to follow it. Now I understand the pushback, but they only have 4 technicians, and the rest of them are non-technical, but they sometimes do technical work. And the only ones that are going to be branded are the technicians. And I think that's ultimately the issue, is if you want to make everyone be branded to the company dress code policy, I understand that. Fine. It is what it is. Have some nice polos, not t-shirts. And hey, this is what it is. But this entire situation that this MSP is facing is specifically because I don't, there's got to be something else that's underlying why they want to do this and why they're pushing so hard. There's something else. They want, from what he said, they want, if a client comes in, they want to look ready. And
Yeah,
what does that even mean?
I don't get it.
Ready to do what? They're sitting there.
So the way we always handled this was, we gave out polos, we gave out dress shirts. I think I have some t-shirts somewhere, but I wear them for like mowing the lawn, not for going to the office with. We specified just be professional, right? Don't look like a slob. Wear a polo. It doesn't matter if the logo is company or Nike or whatever on the polo. Um, and honestly, trust your guys to make a decision about where they're going. And that means if you're going on site to an industrial machine shop, you might dress differently than if you're going on site to a legal client or an accountant
Yeah.
client.
I think a polo is so a company branded item serves a couple of purposes. One, it makes everyone look uniform, but 2, it's also a recognizable item. If you go into it, hey, this is so and so from this company. It's a kind of like a security check. Like, they are wearing company branded apparel that they can only get from the company. So that makes sense from that area. But this is just because they want the techs to look ready, I guess, like pizza delivery drivers, because they're always standing there waiting for the next pizza to be ordered, whereas technicians are constantly fixing stuff because nothing's ever working.
Is this, I wonder, I know a lot of MSPs will have prospects come into the office for sales calls. Maybe it's something like that, like they're giving a tour of the office and they think it makes a difference. But again, I would just err on the side of be professional, right? Is anyone going to look at your service techs and say, man, he's wearing like a New Balance polo and not the company one. He's unprofessional.
But that goes back to his branded jacket. Hey, I got a client coming in at 1 o'clock. Put your jacket on after lunch.
Right?
I mean, like, this is such a This feels like a waste of everyone's time.
Yes.
And that's the ultimate issue. Is this none of this is efficient? None of this is serving anyone any benefits aside from a slight marketing maybe enhancement. But as a T-shirt, it's not. They're just going to think. Just so.
I think this falls into the bucket of issues that come up. You know, you're hiring adults, right? Let them be professionals. Let them do what they need to do and make those decisions, right? If you don't trust them to pick out what they wear in the morning, why would you trust them to manage your client environments?
Yeah. I mean, and it's just such a non-issue. Like it's like picking a fight for something. Like if the entire company had to wear branded polos to work, if that was the dress code policy, and that was you provided 5 of your branded shirts and a company jacket, great. Everyone's required, and someone's giving you pushback. Well, it's the company policy. Everyone does it. I understand the frustrations around it, but this is what we want to do, and this is how we operate. This is our company culture.
Yeah.
But in this case, 4 people out of the 14 they have to wear T-shirts that are branded with the company. So he's got downvoted so much, and you had to like scroll through and like unfurl because it rolls it up because it's so negative. And I agree with all of the negative downvotes.
Now, the one thing I will say is it's a good idea, especially when you're this small, to take some time and codify what, if any, dress code there is, right? Like if you're okay with people showing up in sweatpants, I wouldn't be, but if you are, write that down. Or if you don't want people to do that, write that down. Like have some idea so that people aren't guessing about what's acceptable to
Yeah.
you.
Most people default to business casual, but also you should have, depending on the type of technician and the type of employee, dress code could apply differently, right? You may want your account managers or your senior executives when they go to a client meeting to be in a suit, right? That just they may feel more comfortable in a suit or in a company polo. But someone who works remotely, who doesn't go to clients, who really only gets on the phone, doesn't really do video calls, I don't really care what you're wearing. But it does need to be documented. That's the critical thing. Oh, look, Ray is around. Quick, stop bad mouthing him.
Ray's going to be the peanut gallery.
Yeah.
But yeah, take some time and write down expectations. It's just one of those things that ambiguity doesn't do anyone any favors here. Like whatever your expectations are, and I think you and I and most of us would have pretty similar expectations of what business casual is. Write it down just to avoid dumb arguments later. Like it's just such a silly thing to spend time on. And if you can point to, okay, here in the handbook says what the dress code is, and hopefully it's not wear a company polo or T-shirt every day.
Well, I would like to highlight that if you do say you need to wear a company polo, that you provide said item as the company. The employee should not be paying for any company branded merchandise. They should also give it back, because you don't want that winding up in Goodwill or something. You should, dispose of it as you wish, but that become a security risk if it's in Goodwill. Ends up in Goodwill.
That's a good point. I have so much old company branded gear from places I've worked. I don't think I ever gave any of it back.
I mean, most companies
not watching.
Don't ask for it back. Like they don't think to ask for that stuff back, and that's a big issue, because let's say you donate it to Goodwill. Now someone can walk around with your old company's logo on and be like, "Hey, I'm with old company. Give me access to your server room, please."
Yeah, that's a conversation for another episode. Security of techs coming in and verifying, right? We always talk about verifying that it's the client calling when support, and mechanisms to deal with that. Not in most companies, to your point, don't have any protocols with their clients to verify it's them when they're walking in the door. I can't tell you how many times I sent a new guy out to some tech and they let him right into the server room without even blinking an eye or calling to verify or anything.
Yeah, sometimes they'll even let them in without having a company T-shirt. So that's me. I mean, it's a security risk. It's not. I wouldn't classify it as a major one, but it is an issue that I personally would try to get that stuff back if I provided you with a shirt. I just hand it back, right? I think I had shirts from my original jobs that I had in merch that I might still have, like a hat or something that I got. But what's next
I
on the
keep all
list?
my gradient stuff, Kyle. So I'm gonna come to like MSP Geek and see if anyone can spot the
Look,
logo difference.
they stole our logo. Absolutely, 100% sure. I will die on this hill. But I don't think they'll confuse you. The colors are too bright. They're too pastel.
They are pastel.
Miami, 80s Miami vibe. That's the color scheme. Bright blues and pinks.
Yeah, very like 80s, early 90s. You're right. All right, we can move on. We've beaten this one to death.
I need to go downvote that post. Completing tasks too quickly. Someone started working and feel like they're doing a fantastic job, and they're getting pushback because they feel like they're actually not productive. I guess that is possibly. I would find a different MSP to work for, honestly.
This is not what I thought it would be based on the title.
So, from what I can gather from this, the employee is being reprimanded because they're not padding any time. They're completing tasks quickly and efficiently, as you expect a technician to do, and because the billable time is not necessarily as high as it could be. I'm a systems engineer, not help desk, is a curious thing. I don't know what that means in this instance, because they will handle escalated issues, but
yeah,
do they not have their own tickets? Are they internal IT? Like, what is the situation with that?
I'm guessing at this MSP, there's a distinction between guys who like answer the phone and guys who config stuff and touch servers and manage client environments. The direction I think this was going, I think it might make for an interesting conversation. I'd like to hear your perspective on. Is I thought this was going to be someone who thinks, hey, I just found this new, really efficient way to do things, or automated something, or made my job better. Um, and in return, all I got was a big pile of work to do. Like, I feel like I'm just getting more work to do because I'm being more efficient. And, we having him thinking, why should I put any effort into automating this when I can, do it manually and not, have less work to do? What's your reaction to guys who have that kind of, or techs who have that kind of mindset?
So actually, I just did. We have every Wednesday we have a leadership training, and this most recent one we discussed negative traits, accidental negative traits that you may be doing as a leader or manager that you don't realize. And one of those things is performance punishment. Whereas someone is excelling by either automating their tasks, providing massive benefits, doing a fantastic job, and you giving them more work to do, and you start piling it on. And while as someone who has an automation background, that's where I kind of started, was with automating things. There's never enough time to automate the things you do. So as an executive, I would highly encourage those to continue to automate. But not everyone shares the same opinion of automation as I do. A lot of MSPs still struggle with that, even though we're on the AI bandwagon now. Most MSPs fail to understand the power and the efficiency gain and the ticket reduction and resolution time reduction that automation can bring. And as anyone that I work with who does, especially on their own, if they just take the initiative and go start automating tasks that they do, that person's a winner in my book. I do everything I can to encourage that behavior and push them forward.
So what I get out of that is that the answer is, when you're managing solely based on billable hours and utilization, that is what drives this kind of negative thing, right? Because guys will slow work tasks. They'll say, oh, there's a faster way, except if I do it the normal way, now I have an hour out of my 7 I'm supposed to get for the day. Is the solution to this to have more or additional metrics that techs are measured on besides simply raw number of hours logged?
So there's not enough information for me to, in this post, for me to really understand what the real issue is, because it doesn't say he's on help desk. He will get escalated tickets. Doesn't mean that's all he does is escalated tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So as as an MSP leader, it's the billable hours would not, like, that affects the job role you're in. If you're primarily on help desk, you're going to have a much higher chance of billable hours than someone who only does partial escalations. And if you're completing tasks quickly, so I think I seen at some point they were like, the instruction and the quote unquote reprimand, I guess you could say, was that they've been completing tasks in an unrealistically short amount of time, and they can't possibly either be fixed or all the stuff logged correctly. And at that point, I would just challenge them to tell them how I've done it wrong. Right? If that was me, I would be like, okay, well, show me where I haven't logged or done something correctly.
Yeah, agreed.
Because if you obviously know better, did I miss something? I would put it back onto them to demonstrate how I didn't do correctly. And if their expectation might be, it might take an hour to do a password reset, which is not accurate. An actual password reset is going to be like 5 minutes. The processes and procedures that wrap around that, which you should have at every MSP, would obviously take longer. But the actual time it takes to complete said task is going to be very small.
I wonder if this could also be a case where it's somebody who isn't logging their time in real time. Like, they get to the end of the day and they say, oh, this thing I did took 0.25 hours. Let me put the time in. Because if your time entries are something like 9:07 to 9:46, right? Like the actual real time it took you to do something. Your PSA will round it to whatever your billing process is, right? The closest quarter
Which you
hour
should not worry about. You should only worry
Right.
about the actual time for the ticket.
Exactly. But this could be somebody who doesn't really remember the actual time he did it and just said, yeah, it probably took 0.25 hours, because they were going back in at the end of the day trying to fill out their timesheet. I know I've definitely had techs who have done that.
Yeah, that can be a problem. But as someone who likes to make decisions based off of information, as part of my decision-making process, anything that's messed up in that information chain is a problem, and padding time completely against. I'd rather know that you're not inputting, like, I'd rather see that you've only have 50% billable hours and start investigating why, because that's not necessarily their fault. That could be my fault. Maybe I didn't configure the system correctly. Maybe they're just not getting enough tickets and they're working. Maybe I'm giving them a client that doesn't bill, right? Mm-hmm. There's a ton of things that can go into that one single metric, and I don't like the fact that I'd rather it be accurate so that I can fix the real problem than it be padded and adjusted.
Yeah, that goes back to something I think I can't remember if it was you or Ray that we talked about a few episodes ago, that making sure as a manager to not set the expectation that admin time, or whatever your PSA calls, empty time, right? ConnectWise calls it admin time usually, is bad, right? It's not a bad thing if you had nothing to do, or if you were working on something internal, or if you said, okay,
Your
my time
meetings.
sheet adds up to 8 hours. Here's the 2 hours of things that I wasn't working on anything specific. It needs to be accurate. And, I've seen managers really come down on techs for saying you had too much admin time. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful. One, in that you could find something useful to do. And two, it incentivizes your techs to not be accurate timekeeping. It incentivizes them to reduce admin time so they don't get yelled at.
Yeah. See, you may, but that's the thing, is you may be actually as long as that admin time is accurate. Like you were you're pulled into a meeting, you weren't able to work tickets for 2 hours. Cool. Put in what you were, doing and who you met with and some details, right? Some, just so people can look and review. And if I go back as a manager and I see that you have, 16 hours of admin time for this week, I'm going to be like, that's a lot of admin time. Why do you have so much admin time? And then I'm going to look. And if there's just meeting, admin time, like if there's no information, then I'm going to come at you and be like, hey, this is a problem. You've got 16 hours of admin time, but I can't justify why you have it. And if you tell me now, you're just making stuff up and trying to remember, and it's not going to be accurate. And that's not going to help me figure out what the problem is, to be able to justify why you have that admin time. So just keep it accurate. And if that'll show people, hey, well, you keep drawing me in meetings, you keep pulling me into this meeting, I don't want to go to them. But I'm now required. So
yeah. And the other thing with that is, if you're in a client meeting, put your meeting time in the ticket associated with that meeting, right? Most agreements are all you can eat anyway at this point, but if not, a manager can go change it to not billable later. And don't be afraid to put time entries in against your own company when you're doing internal stuff.
Yeah. Ray asked a good question. Did they ask if their boss, how they qualify productivity? They did not. They don't have that specified. I think I said that earlier about having them, but that's what I meant by, tell me what I did wrong that I didn't log or do correctly. It's kind of what I meant by qualified productivity. But never pad your time. It is detrimental to all involved, because a lot of businesses use that to calculate. As a service industry, we use time to determine if we're profitable on a specific client or not. And if we're not accurate with our time, then our profitability numbers are not accurate, and that's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
It also doesn't like if accurate timekeeping is so important, because we have, are we overloaded? Are we underloaded? Do we need to figure out, do we have to hire more staff? Do we need to make cuts? Like there's a ton of decisions that have to be made based on accurate timekeeping. And if you're complaining about being overworked and understaffed, look at your time. Is time accurate? Do you have 7 hours for this last week? And they're like, well, it says we only worked 15 hours last week and we have 37 employees. So we don't need any more. We need to actually
I guess we're good.
Yeah. So that's...
So get your time in. It's not just your manager trying to be a huge pain to you. It's super important.
Mm-hmm. What's next?
All right. Yeah, we beat this to death. We're doing that today. We're beating all of them to death.
Ooh, that's a good one.
When to departmentalize. In your opinion, when should an MSP departmentalize techs from everybody's reactive to reactive and proactive teams? Okay, so they're talking about reactive and proactive. I think, though, the general question is more interesting than that specific example. Have a group of techs doing nothing but working help desk tickets, and techs whose sole responsibility is to manage RMM, patching, backups, etc. For those of you who operate MSP with the all-in seat solutions, what ratio do you have for seats to techs? Okay, there's some good questions in here. Well, I guess let's start with the one that's asked, right? When to break out what I would call like central services or tool management or one of like 12 different names depending on who you talk to. When do you break that out?
In my opinion, they should be so breaking out a department. There's that means a lot of different things. From the financial aspect, that you can have a P&L for that department. There's a bunch of stuff going on with that. If you want to segment workloads and segment responsibilities, that's also different. So
Yes.
if, in my opinion, breaking out a department should happen when a single person is encompassing that is their encompassing day. So like and then an example, the help desk and proactive, if we have a single person doing nothing but handling proactive stuff, backup checks, proactive automations, tickets from alerts, and as their sole responsibility, I would then break that off into a proactive department. I wouldn't necessarily P&L that department at that point, but
Right. That would be a position almost rather than a department.
Yeah. So I would segment them, and I would classify that as a proactive department, and I would start looking at KPIs and metrics to determine the workload for the proactive department and when to do, just like I would for the help desk, and when I should hire and what steps to take.
And I think you raised a good point though. Like the salaries for people in the proactive department are coming out of monthly managed services agreements. It's not like a projects team, which is usually one of the first true P&L departments. That's usually coming out of paid projects that have to cover their own employee salaries. That's not coming out of the agreements. So I would do the same thing. I would make that like a team or an individual based on how many people you have. I know Ray talks all the time about having a DevOps person in-house assigned to that. Um, Likely though coming out of managed services team, not like its own separate business unit department.
So I would that's a good lesson. For P&L purposes, I would classify them both in services. The services business unit, I guess you could probably say that as projects would be its own business unit. Proactive would be lumped in with managed services business unit, but it'd be its own department in this phrasing. But sometimes people, department means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So that's how I would structure it personally, is as soon as I have someone who's sole with like projects, if I have someone's sole responsibility is projects, I would split them off into a projects department and I would start doing the same thing. But as a revenue generating system, I would start building a P&L for them.
Yeah, exactly. Totally different. So is it day one though? Do you have somebody dedicated? Maybe not day one. Day one, there's one guy doing everything. But early on, do you have someone who is in charge of RMM and automation, and that is most of, if not all of what they do? Or is it better for the organization to foster an environment where everyone is contributing to automation and everyone is looking to make those deficiencies? We went back and forth on that. We had a few guys who were really, really good at dev work and could have been devs or were devs in some cases. And we found that when we turned it over to everyone, that we ended up with a lot of really bad automation that we had to go back and fix. So what's your approach to that? Do you do both? Do you dedicate someone? Is it better that the people writing bad automation learn how to write better automation? What's the
It depends is my answer. As I said, I am fully on board with automation. And I do think having everyone understand how automation works at a minimum is critical to being a successful is the wrong word, to being an efficient MSP. Having a dedicated team to write automation is acceptable. Having everyone write automation is also acceptable to me. But I understand as you grow, it's easier to pass on automation to an individual who's an expert at it because they work more quickly, they understand it better. and they're able to troubleshoot and fix things that happen with their own automation much easier than someone else touching it. But as a smaller MSP, everyone should be looking at how to automate and doing their best to automate. Bad automation can lead to horrible things, but as long as everyone's on the same page of what automation is supposed to do, how to operate it, and has training on it, then I'm okay with that. And then segmenting as you get larger.
Yeah, that's what we found too. Like as we grew and scaled, it just made sense to have a couple of people who took care of this stuff. And then they would solicit ideas from the rest of the team for, does this need to get automated? Does it make sense to do this? And occasionally offer to have them help or develop or, take a stab at writing the script or whatever it is they were working on.
The person, like if you're big enough to segment it, the person sending that automation request should have a full step-by-step detailed guide on how to do it manually, so that the automation person doesn't have to figure it out. Which goes back to making sure that everyone understands how automation works. And sometimes automation can't work. There are situations where a simple, repeatable task can't really be automated because of bad decision making in whatever you're working with. You have to manually copy something to a website that doesn't have an API that you can ingest into. Like there's stuff like that.
Some installer that literally makes you hit next.
Yeah, they wrote their own custom installer. It's not using an MSI. So yeah, there are hundreds of situations or several situations like that could easily happen. But I think everyone at least understanding what automation is, how automation works, and even I would give basic training on how to automate things like PowerShell. Let people have learned a PowerShell, and stuff like that, because that's going to not only help get a better grasp of how automation works and how people automate things and how DevOps works, but it'll give them a better in their career path, especially as a technician. Learning a scripting language will make you much more valuable and make what you do much easier, because specifically PowerShell, they're building it out to be the CLI of Windows, and like it's a super powerful tool, and you can do almost anything from setting and updating and changing with modern PowerShell than it used to be.
Yeah, and thankfully we're now far enough along that there's not the question of is PowerShell installed on the machine, which I remember being an issue for some
Now
time.
it's which version of PowerShell does it have?
Yeah.
Or the default version of PowerShell does this have?
Okay, so did we answer the original question? I think so. I think the original when to departmentalize, and really that's kind of, I took that as when to specialize. Once you have enough work to justify a single person dedicating themselves to it.
I would like to touch on before we jump to the next one, the ratio for seats to techs. What do you think about that?
I don't have a good answer. We went all over the place on this, and what ended up working seemed like it was different every year. We never came up with a hard number. It really depended on the techs and the clients.
It depends on the client. It depends on your standards. It depends on the workload. It depends on how they operate. It depends on the level of technician they need. Like we have a specialized client that needs basically high level 2, level 3 technicians. Their seat count's going to be low because they're a development shop who does development stuff, and we support them. And like it's just that's a much more expensive ratio. That's I like Ray's response. If our producer could throw that up there. The ratio of seats to techs is not an easily calculable thing. It's more of like, oh, that's an interesting number, because the amount of hours, in my opinion, and what type of technician are the better way to figure that out, because that's your technicians cost you money and you're selling their services, and that is in my opinion, the way to figure out if what your ratio should be if you need more techs.
I think you're right. You look at how busy everyone is, how backed up queues are, metrics like that for signs that you may be over or understaffed. But I don't think, or at least I'm not aware of any kind of, yes, you should have 300 to 1 users to tech or anything like that. It's very dependent on a lot of other factors.
Yeah, and generally a more experienced and more a better technician, like a better like higher level technician will be able, well, their ratio will be higher than
Mhm.
a level one's will be too. So there's
Yeah,
stuff like that that you
agreed.
got to consider. Or
All
what's the
right,
next one?
moving on. Hey, what are the basic requirements you need to have in your client's environment? Might be a trunk slammer, as you guys call it, one-man band, accidental MSP. Currently have some clients and they're happy with our support. However, deep down, I feel that we might be missing basic setup to ensure things are done right. Do not have access management, network monitoring, asset management. We do have. Oh, this is a different direction again than I thought it was going to be from the title. We do have support channel, system monitoring, patch management, etc. Hope someone could point out what I'm missing here. Might be looking for a mentor as well. So I thought this was going to be things like what are your minimum standards that clients need to have before you'll accept them as a client, where you have to bring
It's
them
where I
up
thought I
to
was going
it,
to go
or
too.
this is almost a what things have to be in your tool stack question.
The answer is nothing. A car to drive out to the, like, you don't need anything. You can, I mean, as an
No,
MSP, you make things much more efficient by having things like remote access and stuff like that. But from an overall standpoint, you're basically their internal IT, and as long as you can work on their systems, that's all you need is that ability. Uh, I It depends on
it's
what you want
another.
to
It
offer.
depends, right? I mean, take an extreme example. Let's say that you're some hyper specialized MSP that only works
Internet, yes, Ray.
with like air gapped clients that have no internet, right?
Oh yeah,
Um, then you have no necessarily remote
someone works
control
at paper and
software or
pencil,
RMN,
has one of those old mainframe terminals
and you
programmed
might
in
very
Perl.
well like be a profitable business doing that if you have the clients that need that.
Hey, well, banks run on COBOL still, so I mean, systems written in the 80s and 70s. Like it's entirely possible that they don't, like, you don't have internet to that machine. Uh,
Right?
so I mean, if that's how you operate, then yeah, you don't need anything. But to make things better for you and to make things better for the ease of use of your services, I would probably put an RMM and access system for you to get in, like a Screen Connect or TeamViewer or Logman or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
some kind of ticketing system, most
I
likely, unless you have like one client, and even then, it would still be pretty helpful.
Yeah, and there are open source tools you can get for these things. You don't necessarily have to pay for them, um, but I would absolutely work on that. Those are the two minimum things. Something to invoice at an accounting package. I guess you're a business, you need to have one of those
Yeah.
to be able to be able to make money legally. IRS, don't come at me.
Right? Create an actual business might be a good idea. Although I guess you can operate as a sole proprietorship if you're just you.
I mean, you need what you feel you need. There's nothing that's an absolute requirement other than stuff that you need for the government to be okay with you and for your clients to be happy with your services.
I think that's the answer, right? It depends on what you're doing, what you feel you need, what's helpful, what clients are willing to pay for dealing with the tool expense. And I think that's the takeaway here, that there is no prescriptive magic stack. I think we focus way too much industry wide on what tool set do I have, as opposed to service offering and things like that. Um, whatever you end up needing to get the job done is what you need. It's as simple as that. There's no list to follow. There's things that might be a good idea, might be helpful, but no decree that you're not an MSP unless you have XYZ.
Yep.
I would, though, like to address what we thought the thread was about. I think that's a worthwhile point for a minute. The minimum standards that you have to take on, either to be a client or in some cases security standards, right? Your non-negotiables, and that again will differ
Depends.
for pretty much every MSP. But there are some, like I know some.
I would say this more depends on size versus type, and maybe like your verticals.
Yeah.
But aside from those two, it's kind of up to your own personal preferences.
It kind of depends, right? So we've talked about I can't have, right? If on the security side, for the most part, if you don't have something like MFA around, or if you won't have whatever proper security software installed, MFA is probably the easiest example. One, because it's not a specific vendor, and two, it's become such a basic security requirement. That's the kind of thing that you might be willing to drop a client over, right? A minimum standard. Just decide what the absolute non-negotiables are for you. And same thing on the non-security side. You might decide, okay, I'm not taking anyone with Acer PCs with Windows Home on them, right? Or just some technical standard that you won't budge on. And then as part of onboarding or as part of prospecting, having the discussion to bring them up to standard, right? That you do need to have some introspection, thinking about what your standards are in that case.
Smaller MSPs who are less stable in their income probably won't have a okay, I'm done standard. They might have like you yelled at me, so I'm tired. I'm an owner and I can do what I want, so I'm no longer going to be. We're no longer going to be partners. But they're not going to be. Well, you don't have Windows 11 Pro Home Edition version 7, so get out. The bigger MSPs should start implementing standards because standards does more than just make a client grippier. It makes you more efficient. If you have to support every brand of firewall, your technicians are going to have to look at when I get an issue that to troubleshoot a firewall. They're not going to remember the specifics on how to work in this firewall brand. They're going to have to go and look it up. They're going to have to spend much more relearning how to do it. And if it's just the same firewall over and over again, that stuff's going to stick, and they're going to be much easier to resolve. Your resolution times are going to come down and stuff like that. Standards can be I like it from an efficiency perspective, but there's always exceptions, right? If something's working and a client is okay with it and everyone's on the same page that you may not be able to get vendor support or something, or there might be a security issue, fine. I do think if you're in specific verticals, like if you deal with healthcare or you deal with credit cards, your clients are compliant to those, because that might open you up to liabilities depending on your BAAs and whatnot. That'd be the only thing I'd ultimately put a hard line on. Anything that affects me, right, from a legal standpoint.
I've seen it tied to SLAs, which I thought was a cool idea. Like, we can only guarantee coverage if you're on the firewall that all of our techs know. And if you're not, it's kind of best effort for the guy who happens to know Fortinet to show up at the office.
Yeah. That's one way to do it for sure. That makes it a little less painful for the client. At the end of the day, they're paying you for your services. They're not paying you to make them do things. So it's ultimately their decision. And even as an advisor or a partner who has great relationships with them, you can't make them buy something. You can cut ties with them because they won't follow your standards. Sure. You can cut ties with them because they're mean to you. Sure. They can cut ties with you because they don't like your standards.
Yeah.
there's at the end of the day, there's two different businesses making an agreement to work together, and that they can always sever that partnership. So as long as they're reasonable, I think you should have them, depending on the size of your MSP, from an efficiency gain standpoint, and a lowered amount of headaches for everyone involved, and easier training and all that good stuff. But that's my motivation behind having them.
No, I get it. It's another it depends answer. Like I know for us and a lot of, not a lot, but many MSPs out there now, MFA, right? Complete non-negotiable. Just decide what that is for you, what your hard line is, what your standards are, and that answer might not be the same for now. Me personally, biased, I would hope that the MFA on 365 at this point is a universal, non-negotiable, but if it's not going to be, make that decision. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Just decide, are you going to have any that are walk away line level standards? Are you not? And what are they going to be if you have them?
Yep.
All right. So I don't think we have time for another story. We're almost out. So
Yep. I think it's time to wrap it up.
I think so. So thanks
I have
for hanging
to,
out
before
with
we
us.
completely go, I have to mention this. Otherwise, Ray will probably yell at me because he told me
Do it.
in the chat
gonna tee you
and
up.
in the Discord that I have to mention MSP GeekCon. Early bird tickets are available. To producer just immediately.
Ready.
Good job, Simon. MSP GeekCon is happening. We're getting ready to start announcing our core session speakers for this year. Super excited about it. We're running it back. Can't wait. But it's going to be super awesome. We added more speakers for our breakout sessions. We fixed a lot of some of the feedback, based on some of the feedback we had. But it's great. I'm super excited. Early bird tickets are still available up until the end of January. So get them now. If you want to, we're still looking for speakers. So if you're interested in speaking, that's also available until the end of January. If you're worried about speaking, you've never done it before, there's a box for you to check that will help you guide you on your path. So please come join us. Nonprofit building a conference about education for those in the MSP who don't generally get to go to conferences, and those who don't generally get a lot of education. They have to seek it on their own. So that's what we're trying to do. And great feedback from last year. Phenomenal feedback, and everyone loved it, which was a very big surprise for us. So I appreciate all of them who did that, and I hope you join us.
I've said to everyone who's ever asked me that MSP GeekCon had just a totally different vibe than any other conference I've ever been to. Like, it was just amazing in a really, really good way. Definitely encouraged. IT Nation Secure is right after that, or almost right after that.
Yeah.
There's my plug, 1 week apart. So I think we'll wrap up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. As you can see, Kyle and I are definitely out of practice, but I think we got some good content, some good info here, and we look forward to next week. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.